Khabbab ibn al-Aratt, he suffered a lot. And finally, he just reached his limit, or what he thought what might be his limit. And he went to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he says, will you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us? Will you make dua to Allah for us? And listen to what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him. Now Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sitting, and he's sitting in the shade of the Kaaba, and he's wrapped in his thobe. And this is when the Khabbab comes to him. This is during the Meccan phase, when the Muslims are they're being utterly disgraced in every way. They're being killed, they're being persecuted, they're being tortured, all of that. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the tradition says that he turned red in his face, and he sat up, and he began talking to Khabbab ibn al-Aratt, right? He began being firm with him. And this is what he said. He said, among those believers before you, one of them would be seized. A ditch would be dug for him, and then he would be thrown in it. Then they would bring a saw. It would be put on the top of his head to split him in half. And then his flesh would be torn from the bone with iron combs. Yet, all of this did not cause them to abandon their religion. Their faith did not leave them. And then he says, Wallahi, he says, by Allah, I swear by Allah, this religion will prevail until a rider can travel from Yemen to Hadr al-Maut, fearing no one but Allah and the wolf, that it might trouble his sheep. And then he says something I want us to pay attention to. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, he said, rather, you are being impatient. Rather, you are being impatient. Now, I just want to narrate the life to put this in context. To put this in context, you have to understand what Khabbab ibn al-Aratt had been through. All right? So there was a woman. Her name was Ammar. She was one of the Quraysh, right? She was one of the Qurayshi women. Now, this is not Ammar. This is not Sumayya, right? We're not talking about that one. Her name was Ammar al-Khuzayya. So she needed a slave because she wanted to use the slave to make money. Right? Have the slave do work, and then you reap the benefits. So she goes to the slave market, and she picks someone she notices, okay, he's smart, right? And he's strong. He was young. Wasn't even a teenager yet. All right? He wasn't even a teenager. So after she did the transaction, she begins to ask him his name. So he says, Khabbab. My name is Khabbab. And she said, your father's name? Aratt. So he's Ibn al-Aratt. And then she assumed, because he was very dark-skinned, so she assumed that he was actually Habash. He was from East Africa. That's what she was assuming. But he told her, no, I am from Bani Tamim. I am an Arab. Right? And this was very common at that time. The Arabs were very dark people. Like the original Arabs from that Saudi Arabia, they were dark. So then she asked him, how did you end up a slave? Right? Because you can understand if somebody from another country is a slave, but how do you become a slave? So she said, our tribe and somebody else's tribe fought a war, and my tribe lost. They killed all of the men, and they took the women and children, and they put them into slavery. Thus you see me like this. So, and then he says something, he said, my whole life I've only known slavery. That's it. I've only known slavery my whole life. He said, I went from master to master, from place to place, serving my masters. So then she said, she understood, like, okay, right, like I got one. He probably has been trained. He knows how to, serve the master and everything. So she takes him to a very hard job, which is you have to learn how to become a blacksmith. You have to learn how to shape metal. And eventually he became even better than the trainer that she took him to. So he earned in the society, like This is Meccan society. He became known as someone of integrity and someone of very, very high skill. People would seek him out and they would wait for a long time to receive their goods because they knew that he had perfected the skill. Now, he has no future prospects. He's a slave. He's not earning any money. The only thing he gets for his service is food. That's it. He's in slavery. All of his money goes to Ammar al-Khuzayya. He hears about the call of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That there's this man and he's saying, La ilaha illallah, there's no God but Allah. And then he begins to seek him out. He sought him out. Now the ulama say that he was like one of 10, the first 10 people, he was one of them. The first 10 people to become Muslim, he was one of them. So this is very early on. And it's important to understand, to know that he's going to suffer the most. Right? He's going to suffer the most. He's a slave in society. He has no protection. He has no one to help him. And this is his situation. He goes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he hears and he accepts. He's not educated. He doesn't have any, he doesn't have any money. It was just because of his fitrah, his natural disposition. As soon as he heard it, he knew it was true. And so he accepted Islam. He was one of the first ones to outwardly proclaim his Islam. You got to think about this now. He has no status in society. He has no protection. No one is going to come and save him when somebody wants to hurt him. Nobody is not. He's going to pay. He's going to suffer. Despite that, he declares his Islam. So Ammar al-Khuzayya, she hears that he has accepted Islam. So she goes to her brother. I can't remember his name right now. She goes to her brother and she says, go and find out if this is true. And, take some of the people from Bani Khuzayya, some of them were like gangsters, right? Like, take some reinforcement. That's what she's saying. So they walk up to him. They find him in the marketplace, walk up to him, and they say, oh, we heard you abandoned your religion. Meaning their religion. They worship idols. And he says, I didn't abandon your religion. Basically, I was never with you. I wasn't on the same page as you. But rather, I have submitted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they beat him, and they beat him, and they beat him. And they left him unconscious in the street. And this would happen every day afterwards. They would catch him, and they would beat him. And he would just say to them, when he would see him coming, he would just be like, do what you're going to do. Right? Isna'a ma tasna'a. Just do what you're going to do, man. Just do what you're going to do. And then they would beat him and leave him bleeding, unconscious in the street. When that didn't work, they began to starve him. When that didn't work, they lashed him, drawing blood. When that didn't work, they put him in the sun under coats of mail. Like somebody put some metal armor on you and put you under the sun and you bake there for hours. And then when that didn't work, they finally used the hot coal, the poker, and would rake the skin off of his back. Not just the skin, but the narration actually says that the fat under the skin would melt and run down his back. In other narrations, one time he pulled his shirt off for Umar ibn al-Khattab, and Umar just wept because they saw how much he suffered. Okay? He would scream and scream and scream, and no one would come and help. Khabbab ibn Al-Aratt. One time, Ammar al-Khuzayya, she caught him speaking to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the marketplace. She took the poker Remember, it was on his back at first. She took the hot poker. You know, you take a poker and you put it in the fire. You know, like something that you're going to brand somebody with. She took it and raked it across his head, leaving burns and scars. And he passed out from the pain. And then finally, alhamdulillah, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anh, bought him and set him free. But he was still not safe from the persecution of the Meccans. Because even though he's free, he's not a part of a clan that can protect him. So they would catch him and they would still beat him. This is the context that he goes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and says, Ya Rasulullah, please supplicate for us. And how does Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam respond? You are not being patient. So what about us? We got a lot of work to do. And no one should be saying, oh, the measure in Riverside didn't pass. I'm done. You kidding me? We have a lot of work to do. If Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that to Khabbab ibn Al-Aratt, what would he say to us? What would he say? You think you're doing something? What do you think you're doing? You have AC, you got comfortable beds, you got brand name clothes, you got nice cars, you got all these different things, and you can't go stand in line for your brothers and sisters? You can't spend some of your money for your brothers and sisters? You can't speak out for your brothers and sisters? And you have all of the amenities of life? Who are we? What have we become? Man, we have a lot of work to do. And we can't stop. إنما الأعمال بالنيات. إنما الأعمال بالنيات.